Namaste. Welcome to Inspiring Women. Inspiring Women is a TV show where we bring women leaders from all around the globe and share their success stories. Our guest for today's episode is a New York Times best-selling author, CARMEN. Welcome to the show.
Thank you so much.
What was the title of your first book and how has the journey been?
The first book I wrote was called When Helping You Is Hurting Me. And actually it came out of a failure that I had. Most of us think that we need to build one success on another, but it's really important to take your failures and turn them into something that's helpful. So I was a social worker. I just burnt out. I was sick. I had panic attacks. I was really quite a mess. And I observed myself going through this process, created a pattern, some concepts, and then I sold it to a publishing house. And so I was able to write my first book on burnout and how to recover from that.
What is your source of inspiration? Is it the people? Is it your experiences? Is it the conversations? Or is it imagination?
I'm not imaginative. That's for fiction writers. All of my books come from my own experience. They come primarily from my mistakes. Things that I don't do well, I go to therapy or I study them or I work with them, and then out of that comes a book. But I'm a non-fiction writer. Fiction writers tend to create worlds and imaginary characters. That's a different kind of a brain than I have. I am a non-fiction writer, so I write out of what I experience.
You are an author and you're also the founder of a book company, book writing company. Where did the idea originate from?
Well, I've written a lot of books under my own name, and I'm older and I decided I wanted to give back. So what I do is I meet people who have really important stories, but they don't know how to write. So I'm a ghostwriter, so I write the book for them, but it's in their voice. So my mission really is to help other people tell their stories.
When you look back, what do you think is a major milestone in your life or career?
Whoa. Well, I guess getting on the New York Times best-selling list was a big success for me. But the journey has been pretty consistent. I really write out of what I'm experiencing and what I'm learning in life. I'm the kind of person that thinks people want to know what I have to say. And I think you have to have that kind of arrogance to be an author. Something inside of you says somebody wants to read my material, so it's okay to be a little arrogant because you want to put your material out there.
From your own experience, you have developed a 5-step spiritual process that is called the More Factor. Could you tell us something more about this?
I would love to. I've developed it over the last 10 years, and it's really helped me considerably because challenges are always coming into our lives. So the first step is really that you accept the challenge and you look at what you have. So that's choose. The second step is to cherish, where you value what you have. Most of the time we're taught to set goals out there in the future somewhere. And what that does is that makes us pay attention to what we don't have. But this principle is to look at what you do have. So that's cherish. The third step is to create. We create by rearranging what we have. You can never create something out of what you don't have. So when you focus on what you have and what you can make of that, that changes your whole attitude. And then the fourth step is to collaborate, so that what you're creating puts together with what I'm creating, and we make something really new. And the last is to celebrate, where we share what we've created with other people and we welcome them into the community. So it really is taking what little you have and making it all that you need.
So you've shown us a connection between gratefulness and creativity.
Yeah, I've read a lot about you're supposed to feel grateful, right? And gratitude helps you. Well, I lost my job, I lost my house, I was going through a lot of trouble. I wasn't grateful. I was mad. So I stopped and I said, okay, what do I have? And I said, well, I've got a chair, I've got a place to live, I've got my daughter, I've got my friends. And then as I looked at what I had, I realized I had a wealth of resources. I didn't necessarily have a lot of money, but I had a lot of help and a lot of support. And that changed my attitude, and I was grateful. Then I could be creative. But when I wasn't grateful, I was just mad and upset and looking at everything I'd lost.
Sometimes people have difficulties, and you've mentioned that one can never get over a problem with a victim mindset. So what is one of the most common mistakes that people make when they're trying to cope up with a problem or deal with a difficult situation?
Usually when we're victimized, we don't want to admit it. So we push that away and we act like, that didn't hurt me. But it's really important to say, yes, I was really hurt. That really hurt me, and this is the consequence of it. But when you're victimized, it's not fair, it's not kind, but it's your job to fix it. So if I spend the rest of my life saying I'm a victim, you're going to get stuck. So the first step is to acknowledge you've been victimized, but the second step is to say I'm going to move beyond it and I'm going to learn from it. And there's a lot of people who identify themselves continually as being victimized. They poor me, and they focus on what they don't have instead of focusing on what they do have.
What is it that keeps you going?
Oh, I don't know. I believe in God. I believe that I have a purpose, and I'm fulfilling that purpose. I adopted my daughter from Nepal, which is why I love this country so much. I didn't intend to love this country, but I came and I lived here for almost 2 years. And in that time period, I just fell in love with the people. So I think love and a sense of purpose is what keeps me going.
You are a New York Times best-selling author, and you have a career in writing over 30 years. So when is it that you first discovered that language has power?
I've always been a writer. For me, I journaled since I was in high school. And if I don't put it into words, it's not real for me. If I just think it, it's not real. But if I write it down, and I found that there are people who are writers, they have to put everything into words, and that's where they have the power. But if I were a painter, I would have to put things into images. Or if I were a singer, I would need to put things into music. So depending on your creative energy, you have a need to put your experience into that format. You can be a writer but not be marketable. So there's a difference between being a writer and being published. The publishing field is not, it doesn't care. It just wants to make money. So you could be the best writer, but if you can't find a topic to publish, then you won't be successful. So it's really important to say, I'm a successful writer because I am able to satisfy my needs. But if you want to be a published author, you may have to change what you're writing so that it fits the market. You can also be a not that great writer, and you can write a book that will sell. So they're really different. Authors and writers are different people. Different roles.
Since we touched upon the topic of a writer, we would like to know, what is your style of writing? Is it spontaneous or is it conscious?
Some writers write every day, like from 8 to 12 or something. I don't do that. I write when I have to. So a project has different stages. You develop a concept, a hook, a title. You develop the outline. Then you write. And then you edit, and then you publish. So I work on these projects, and it depends on what part of the project I'm doing. But I don't write every day.
Do you think someone can be a writer if they don't feel emotions strongly?
Oh yes, I think that you can be a writer if you're capable of taking what happens to you and put it into words. And you could be an interviewer. You can interview other people and put their experience into words, or you can talk about your own, or you can make up a world. I think that being able to emotionally connect to the reader is important. So if you're really disconnected from your feelings, it might be a problem. But you don't need to be, drama to be a good writer.
During one of our conversations, you mentioned that you wanted to be a spiritual director. Can you enlighten us on the concept?
I used to be a therapist, and what psychology has discovered, it's very important for a person to be able to tell their story. Let's say you have two people, one has had an okay life and one has had a very difficult life. If the person who had an easy life can't tell you their story, they're not as emotionally healthy as the person who had a difficult life, but can tell you their story. The important thing is being able to create meaning out of your experience. So my job as a spiritual director would be to help somebody make sense of what has happened to them, what the bad things that have happened, the good things, the successes. And I want to help people to tell their entire story, because that is what brings them healing and a sense of purpose and a spiritual center.
What advice would you like to give to the youngsters who are just starting in the career of writing?
You really need to understand that there are two different, like I said before, there's writing and there's publishing. And most of the time we get that blurred. There are two sets of skills. So practice your writing skills, become as good as you can, but also learn about publishing and how you can get your material out into the marketplace. And when you do, expect criticism. That's okay, that's going to happen. But there's two different sets of skills.
Last but not the least, is there anything that we missed out asking that you'd like to tell our viewers?
I think the main thing in my life is that my mistakes have been my best treasures. I know some people, they go to school and they make good grades and then they go to become a doctor or they build on their successes. But my life is very different. I became a social worker and I collapsed. So my life has been a series of disappointments and problems, and I feel like God has helped me turn those around into successes. So do not be afraid of failure. Don't let it get you down. You can pout for a little while and feel bad, but then pick yourself up and then you go forward and you learn from those mistakes.
Thank you for being with us. It was an honor having you here in the show.
Oh, I'm delighted. Thank you.